going back in history, the time that I joined the firm, which was in 1995, it was a very different period compared to what it is today. The firm was very small. Everybody knew each other. It was a very collegial atmosphere. And so it was a very nice environment to work in. From a work standpoint, it was actually the early days after liberalization in 1991. So there were a lot of new transactions coming in. There was a lot of activity happening in the corporate sector. So the fascinating thing for me was that everything that we did was very, very new. So there was the new, offering of a particular type of securities. There would be a new type of securitization transaction, a new type of structuring of an M&A. So everything that we did was new and it was path-breaking. So it was, every deal was a learning experience. And that was really a fascinating thing that I really cherish even today, because a lot of the learnings that I underwent in that period of time, it was indeed a very steep learning curve, have stood me in good stead even as we speak today. So a lot of the seniors I work with, including Mr. Shroff, they have taught me, perhaps not explicitly, but just observing them going about their routine and the way they did their work, the way they thought through legal problems and advised clients was a fascinating learning experience for me as well. So these are some moments that I would certainly cherish. Of course, it was really hard work, and there is no substitute to hard work in the initial stages of one's career. But looking back, it also was a fun period in my life, because in some ways, a lot of my colleagues were also my friends. It may also be the reason that we were from the same law school, we knew each other even before. So having that camaraderie with colleagues really went a long way in helping deal with the stresses of long hours, dealing with tough clients and so on. So that's a very important thing that I believe is a good thing to think about as well. So I think overall, it's certainly a very, very positive experience. It's a fantastic time that I've had there. And things were slightly different. I also moved to the Bangalore office. And I went from what was actually the bustling place at that time, which was the Mumbai office, to Bangalore, which is a very small office at that point of time. But I'm glad that over a period of time, the Bangalore office has also become very big now. But that is an experience which is very different for me, because there it also involved my taking responsibility for the office itself, however small that may be. But we did have a wonderful working environment there, and I was fortunate to have wonderful colleagues there as well. And we had a really good time working in that office as well. About 13 years ago, I took a very unconventional move, which was to move completely away from partnership at the law firm to embark on a career in academia. Even today, I think most people who meet me for the first time ask me, one of the first questions that they ask is, why did you make that kind of a move? And that was for many reasons, including the fact that I used to teach as an adjunct while I was practicing as well. And I kind of liked that teaching. And that's a journey that I embarked on as my second career. And that's been a fruitful and rewarding journey as well. And that's a journey which I'm still in the process of going through. And that's been a very different journey compared to what it's been in practice. Because here, instead of dealing with clients, I'm largely dealing with students. I'm dealing with other academic colleagues from time to time in the area of law, especially in my area of corporate law, corporate governance, and so on. So it's been a very different journey from practice, but it's definitely been something that continues to be rewarding. But there are also some struggles that one needs to work through, because there is no client, there is no boss, there's no one chasing you. So there is a little bit of self-discipline that is required, and a lot of that is actually required in academia, and that's something that I have been struggling with. But I think the fact that I was in an environment like AMSS, where there was a discipline of and a certain work ethic, that certainly helped me stay afloat in academia as well. A couple of leisure activities that I undertake on a regular basis. The first is I like to walk a lot. in between also started running, but due to wear and tear, I had to give up on the running. But I live in Singapore, which is also referred to as the city in a garden. So there's a lot of green space, and I'm really fortunate that I have some of those very close to where I live. So I spend a lot of time, especially on weekends, undertaking walks in various parks and gardens in Singapore. So that's something that I enjoy very much. I also listen to a lot of music and of varying styles and kinds. So that's again something that I really enjoy spending my time on. Over the last couple of years, I've also stumbled upon a habit which has now made a lot of difference to me, because I discovered the beauty of audiobooks a couple of years ago. So I've now taken to listening to a lot of audiobooks. And in the last 2 years, I've probably consumed more books than I ever have had before that. And it also works well with my other habits, because when I walk, I also listen to books as I do so. So that's been something which has been very beneficial for me in the last couple of years. In terms of books that I came across recently, I think two particularly stand out. The first one that I recently completed reading, it's a very long book, 26 hours or 27 hours on audio, was President Obama's new memoir on the Promised Land. So that was something that I really enjoyed, because it not only gives a sense of politics in the US, international affairs, diplomacy, so many different facets. And it also gave a good insight into what Obama was as a leader, his leadership styles and his personality and so on. And the second book, which I found very interesting, I'm not sure how much of it I can actually implement, is a book called Deep Work by Cal Newport. And that was a very interesting book, because especially in today's age, where all of us need to set aside enough amount of time within each day, or maybe over a week, or even a longer period of time, if possible, to really engage in deep thinking, which is actually now a very limited or rare commodity, given how busy our life has become. There's another book, again, I came across recently, called Bored and Brilliant, which is again similar to this concept, which is, unless you're bored, you'll never come across a striking idea. Because if we were all busy with our devices and always thinking about something or the other, we don't have any opportunity that we're creating for ourselves to be able to think of something really big. So maybe there's nothing wrong with being bored. And it's during those times of boredom that one can come up with some major thing. It need not be an earth-shattering idea, but something that may advance oneself. These may be striking opportunities that may arise. So I found that concept also fairly interesting. Social causes, so to speak, that I have been associated for the last few years is the whole area of education. So I have in a way embarked or plunged myself into that space in more of a formal sense, because that's today my day job rather than as a social cause in that sense. But one of the areas that I hope to see in the future is to enhance diversity in access to education. Maybe legal education, maybe other forms of education. Nobody who's smart should be deprived of the access to education for financial or any other reason. So I think ultimately the goal would be to see as much diversity in the education space. And I think one of the inspirations for this is the late Professor Shamnad Bashir, who started IDIA, which is thriving today and has done a fantastic job in the context of diversity in access to legal education. But perhaps enhancing that into other forms of education would also be something that I hope to see in the future, and to be able to contribute to the extent I possibly can. That would be something I would be interested in. One of the things that the pandemic has taught us all is the sense that we also need to engage in some kind of adaptability. So we all need to be adaptable, because change is inevitable. And a lot of things that we thought was impossible before the pandemic was actually made possible because the need arose. Like as they say, if there is a necessity, then you would have to come up with the invention, right? Necessity is the mother of invention. So I think if we are open to be adaptable in nature, then a lot of things that we think is not possible can actually be realized. So even though there's a pandemic, all of us are confined to our homes. There's activity that's gone on pretty much with some disruption. Of course, one can't deny that. But there hasn't a lot of work, for example, I'm sure in the legal sector, in the educational sector that I'm involved in, have gone on with some amount of adjustments that everybody has had to make. But in the end, the work didn't come to a standstill. Or in some ways, like in the university setting, the university didn't come to a standstill. Students still completed their semesters. Students still got their degrees. And so on. So I think that adaptability is something that the pandemic has given us as a lesson that we could take on. And maybe something like this will be useful even in normal times as well.